You're bringing way too much crap to your gigs, and it's killing your musical career and your band's future. Hey kids, this is Ivan. If you don't know, I have been playing in bands and doing sound for bands for the last 40 plus years. And over that amount of time, one of the mistakes that I see bands make to this very day is they bring way too much gear, and a lot of it is way too big. And this, causes you problems that you might not realize. It's not just that it's going to kill your back, but it can affect your marketability and your ability to get, rebooked at places. And I've said this a lot, but it bears repeating. When you're playing at any venue, you are in a contractual business arrangement, whether you know it or not. And your job is to bring people there, unless you're older like me, in which case all your friends are in bed. But then at least keep the people that are there entertained, keep them there, keep them buying stuff. And that's your job. And anything you do that's kind of interfering with that is going to affect with your ability to be called back there again. So when we're at whatever I'm playing, I treat the square footage like it's Manhattan. It's super, super valuable. It's super valuable for them, and it's super valuable for us. And if we need to, we can go vertical. The more space that you take up, the more space that they give to you, that means they have less space to put paying customers and for their staff to move around in. And I can tell you plenty of stories where, the wait staff are going by me and I'm having to squeeze like this because the stage is right next to where they need to go, and I'm also next to the bathroom. And, you get the idea. If you're lucky, you're going to play someplace that's got a stage. Maybe it actually has a big stage. Maybe it's got its own PA, and maybe there's a sound person. That's awesome. When that happens, that's a day of luxury. Realistically, you're going to play someplace and they're going to put you where they can fit you. And they're probably not going to be happy about doing that. They might have to move tables and wait for people to stop eating, whatever it is. Here's a hint. Check the place out first if you possibly can. I've played in a bunch of places like this, but one sticks out to me. There's this bar I played a couple times with as a sub gig, and the stage area was this little triangle next to the front window or front door, and it was really appropriate for an acoustic duo, but we had a 5-piece band that was playing there, and I had to stand up and I could face the vestibule. So I'm looking out the window where people are coming in, or I could turn around and maybe look at the drummer, but I couldn't actually face the crowd because my bass guitar was too wide, and I was too wide. I think I'm actually kind of wider this way, but you get the idea. It was check the place out and see if you need to make adjustments before you get there. Don't walk in there and go like, oh man, we need to really adjust stuff right away. But the thing is, with your PA, have something that's got like an appropriate, it's a smaller footprint if possible. Get it vertical. Bring a PA that's appropriate for the venue. Bring just enough monitors like in the front because they're taking up valuable real estate, so that they're not taking up too much space from everybody else. And so that's kind of a give and take. Like how much monitors do you really need, or can you share a monitor in front, and all that kind of thing. And a lot of times people just bring a PA that's way too big for the venue, which is a video I'm going to make in the future. But bring small gear. And I'm going to say that you've already watched my video about being too loud, so that's not the problem. Too loud video should show up somewhere around there. Bring small gear. The sound person is going to love you because the gear you bring isn't going to be too loud anyway, and they're going to be able to control the mix and all that kind of stuff. And people will be happy. But bring small gear. So what the heck is small gear, Ivan? Well, for a guitar, I'm going to step on a lot of toes here. 112 cabinet. 112 combo, or maybe even a 110 combo. And I understand the vanity amp thing and the big cool looking amp and stuff like that. And those are for very large places. They're not appropriate for 90%, maybe 95% of the places we play. And I play with tons of people where they have a little amp and I stick a mic in front of it, put it through the PA, and it sounds gargantuan. But the big thing is, in terms of this video, is it's take up a lot of space unless you have a small amp, and maybe you can put it on a stand so you can hear it. Speaking of being able to hear it, as far as bass guitar stuff goes, I obviously like to go modular. I am also a vanity amp person. I love a big amp rig, but my stuff is all modular. I don't have an 810 cabinet. These are 12s. I got 15s underneath them. And, I go vertical. And I go vertical mostly so I can get a cabinet next to my head or closer to my head. And I like the way they sound together, which I'm digressing. But, once again, look at the footprint. The footprint on these things is 18 by 15, I believe, on the bottom. And I've actually played at places where I had to take these 12s, just took a couple 12s, put them on their ends because 18 inches was too wide. And I needed, the 3 inches by getting a 15 by 15 footprint because it was that tight. So look at the footprint and go high. Think Manhattan. Always think Manhattan. What am I going to do here? With keep the square footage low, and if I have to, go vertical. As far as keys go, yes, I understand you can go vertical with 2 or 3 boards, but it is also kind of angling out and taking up more room if you can possibly get away with it. I'm not a keyboard player, so you can throw rocks at me. If you can possibly get away with just using 1 board and not 2, do that. That can help out an awesome, or a super amount. And of course, turning sideways and all that really helps. As far as effects, well, I'm going to step on toes again. Look at how much floor space you're going to take up. What do you really need? What don't you need? And I actually made videos about the pedal pad pedal boards, and I actually got 3 different sizes. I've sold 2 of them, the 2 bigger ones, which I love, but it's like, okay, it's way too big. I've got this other one here, which I think is 24 by 13, and a lot of times that's too big. And I've got a smaller pedal board I made that fits in a laptop case. But there's times when I'm in a place where I either put it on top of my amplifier, so it's not on the floor, or maybe I take the tuner out and I just put it on top of that. You can also go vertical effects as a guitar player too. Especially if you use one of those modelers, unless you're really into hit it with your foot during a song, you can put your Quad Cortex on top of your amp or your HX Stomp or whatever. Just saying, it's possible. So have the ability to do that at least if you run into a place and you're like, oh my God, there's no way we can fit everything here. As far as drums, the drummers that I play with that play all the time, almost all of them play a 4-piece kit. And yes, part of this is because it's easier to bring in less drums, but also because they've learned that, man, a lot of times we're not all going to fit here. And I played with a bunch of drummers last year doing some sub gigs where their drum kit was so huge, it was like having Neil Peart, on stage, that I'm like actually not on the stage. I had to play bass in one case a good distance away from everybody else. Like there were people actually walking between us, I think, to the bathroom or to the kitchen. And I'm way over in this other area because the entire stage is taken up by these drums and the 2 guitar amps. Bring smaller drums, or have a set of drums that you can bring. Oh, I'm sorry about that alarm. Bring smaller drums, things that you can use that, don't take up as much space, because that space is valuable. And then, last but not least, well, maybe it's not last, is, band size. Look at how many members you have in your band. And depending on the venue, can we cut this? And of course, it's dangerous for me to say this is a bass player, because what's going to happen? It's going to be a couple of acoustic guitar players. I have to be at home. And lights. That was the last part. I've bring a small thing of lights if you have to have lights. There are great lights available now. You can go vertical, put them on a stand. Got one little bar. It's great. And I played with a few bands, over the last couple of years that had these enormous light setups that took forever to set up. It took up I was telling people, listen, I think this is a light show with a rock band, not the other way around. So lights can take up, and all the fog machines and stuff like that, they can take up an enormous amount of room. My advice is to go minimal. The bottom line over and over again is don't tick off the venue. Don't take up too much of their space. They're also not going to be super impressed when you're bringing all this crap in there. Once again, they're not a patron of the arts, and they're not people that are going to want to go ooh and ah over your gear. They just want you to entertain their customers. But if you don't take off the venue, if you make people happy, that's going to lead to more gigs. Bringing less stuff is going to be less work for you. It's going to be more money because you get more gigs. Happy crowd, happy venue, happy you. That's good stuff. Who doesn't love that? And the equipment you bring, well, you're going to know how to use it because you're bringing less. And speaking of knowing how to use equipment and problems with that, you can check out the video that should show up somewhere around here about a particular piece of equipment that I see people having problems with all the time.